B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh V'Natzliach. We're doing the Alie Shur. We're on page 53. And we want to talk about here a compelling and concrete, solid bedrock reason why we command, and our faith should be unshakable. Because as our friend knows, there's a lot of atheists and libitard people out there. It says, Tekuvat HaNevuah. You have it, Eitan? He says that for thousands of years, that went from which era? That wrote the Sibur, they wrote the Hakodesh.
So they were turning the
Yeah. So who were the last prophets of Hakodesh? He says, once you have a prophet, like Alie, unbelievable miracles, you know that. Like, for example, we read in the Haftarah this week that the whole the prophets, they were putting, trying to figure out, right? And then they devoured, right? So it happens, indefinitely. But he says, "Have yodim lechakot b'nevuah." You know, Sana was my brother-in-law. Right? It's Kedusha from the Machul. To get on the level of prophecy. The Mesilat Yesharim with that. It says if you get the Rauch Hakodesh, it's spark prophecy. Rav Chaim Kan yes. Yeshivot. If you learn Eliyahu had a yeshiva, such a yeshiva, it's called and then hopefully you get the progress. Brings in the chapter 7. He's the people that are ready and want to emulate their mentors and want to prepare themselves to become Nevi'im. They're called Bnei HaNevi'im, the children of the Nevi'im. So basically what they do is they follow in the footsteps, just like Yehoshua always was serving Moshe, right? I didn't serve a great Torah leader. It's called they would pour water and literally become faithful servants like Moshe, and they would emulate their way and learn. What did Eliyahu do to become prophet? These people would hopefully get to that wonderful pinnacle of spirituality, which is what? Becoming a prophet of God. If he says, if you look from the Ramban and the Ramban and the Rambam, it says it was clear from their works in the medieval times that they knew how to get there step by step, right? It was something that wasn't like something outrageous. Because a few generations before, right? Think about it. The Rambam, which was almost 1,000 years ago, there was only a few hundred years before that they had Nevuah. In the time of the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah. Rambam says the preliminary things that brings you to become a prophet is doing all the stuff it says in Pirkei Avot. And being very exact. You actually do it. Chassidut, and then you feel that to the Rambam, and a tunnel path towards what? Prophecy. Right? It's a concrete. Being far away from prophecy, something abstract. There was a time in the villages, 500, 1,000 years ago, where it was. I tell you, I did the thing that even in this day and age, he's going to talk about this. People see Eliyahu Hanavi, our Zocher Legilu Eliyahu. Rav Eliashiv's Talmidim said that the Ben Ishchai definitely, we have witnesses that had Gili Eliyahu. Rav Yosef Shalom Eliashiv. In generation, the most special and auspicious and people that have risen to the highest echelons of spirituality can be Zocher. Even in this day and age, where we find such lowly creatures, Hevuna Dopa around us, but on the other spectrum, the polar opposite side, you have people that can interact and learn from Eliyahu Hanavi, even into this day. It never stopped, this concept of Gilead, he's going to talk about it. He says, next paragraph, he says, Nevuah hi madrigat samah b'shleimut. What does Nevuah mean, prophecy means? It means you've achieved human perfection. And since you're perfect and now God is perfect, you communicate with God.
You're
It's
an
like,
open vessel.
yeah, you're an open vessel, exactly. Oh, and by the way, I have good news for you. There's a book written in English. It was just his Yortzeit last week, right? Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan is one that,
It was his thing last week?
and he's actually Sephardic. Kaplan, he just took that name when he moved.
Sephardic?
Yeah.
didn't
I was
know
listening to a podcast about his thing. He's from a Greek Sicilian family.
Oh, wow.
Sephardic. He says his cousins are actually on the discount back in Israel. Riktani family. He wrote one of his ancestors wrote a great pirush on Midrash Riktani. It's one of the famous midrashim. So you could another great Kabbalist and people that was one of the greatest geniuses of Kiruv and bridging the gap from English to bring people Tachat Kanfei Shechina was Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan was definitely Sephardi. So he wants to say something very interesting here. He says in the time of the Second Temple, already Nevuah stopped, right? Ruach HaKodesh hayta mitzvah b'tisa. But this idea of Ruach HaKodesh, which is a spark of prophecy, always was
Existing.
even to this day and age. We know people have Ruach HaKodesh. Like there's already thousands of stories with Rav Chaim Kanievsky that it's clear that he has. I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe I could go see him next week when I go there. Be'ezat Hashem. It says Rabbi Yishmael ben Abuya. It says who was one of the latest Kohanim Gedolim in the time of the Second Temple, and he was one of the 10 people that was the Hargei Malchut, the people that were sacrificed and died on Kiddush Hashem. How do you say it? It starts with an M, the word in English.
Martyr.
Martyr, yeah. He was one of the 10 martyrs. Siper pam echat. So it's a famous Gemara in Brachot, right? He says, Pam echat nichnasti lahaktir ketoret. He says one time, through divine providence, he found himself in heaven. And he went to bring ketoret in the Holy of Holies, and he found the Shekhinah there. And then he said, bless me. He said, may your mercy also the Shekhinah. Yeah. Okay, I looked to look what that could be, but that's not like a friend was we have to stand. It says you see from that Gemara that everything of the Shekhinah talks about him. Fourth, and Talmud, he says you see the heavy voice. In the Gemara, how do you know what a bat kol is? He says it's a little bit more of Ruach HaKodesh bat kol, but it's a heavy voice. Because it says, we know the female bat kol, because it's from the Shekhinah. Because it says, God tells Abraham.
It's really bashkol, and it says only if it's a man in a city,
Exactly.
or a woman or a desert.
Exactly.
It says hin or lao.
Yeah, so you see, already it has halachos.
Yeah.
How do you know it's for sure bat kol? And it's not some random echo. He says, Hainu beruach HaKodesh shebash, Rashi mechazal bat kol madrikat bat shel ruach HaKodesh. Bat kol, Rashi explains over there in the Gemara, in Megillah,
It's like a lower level of ruach.
yeah, it's a daughter of Ruach HaKodesh. Like Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration, is the father. Bat kol is the daughter of it. V'gam achoreh. He says, don't think after Talmudic times there was no more Ruach HaKodesh. No, there was. He says the students of the Arizal. Yesh lanu od sifrei hadracha. He says, like I was telling you, I learned, Baruch Hashem, we almost finished the Sefer. We're halfway through it. He says over here, the book Sharei Kedusha, from the Rab Chaim Vit. He shows that there's still a God thing. He's giving clear, A, C, D, E, F, G, at Z. Your sense, Yeah, you're going to this good. And what's going to happen? Was there a war between Russia and Ukraine? No. Should have mercy on us all. So he says, he's actually going to quote some of Arei Kedusha. He says, Navi, he's going to quote some parts of this very holy book. Raiti b'nei Aliyah v'hem ha'mu'atim mishtokin l'aliyot. He says, the Marchur, Rab Chaim Vital says, I've seen people that want to get elevated, and they're very few. The people, yeah, people that are yearning, mishtokikim la'alot, people that are yearning to elevate themselves. Ba'asulan nahem elehem. And he says, like the ladder, how to get to nevuah, how to reach the pinnacle of spirituality is close to them. They look in the ancient books, Eitan, they want to attach themselves to Hashem, but they don't know how exactly, precisely. So you see, Rab Chaim Vital is coming to tell you, I'm trying to tell you exactly what to do that you can get to Nevuah. Well, we don't have prophecy, but Ruach Hakodesh. That's a fascinating thing. That's a very deep promise to make. Right? But parenthetically, if you go to the Arizal's Kever, he was supposed to be Mashiach ben David. You know that, the Marchu. And the Arizal was supposed to be Mashiach ben Yosef. But because
Vital was supposed to be Mashiach ben David?
Yeah. The Ari, which was his Rebbe, was Mashiach ben Yosef, and then he was supposed to, but then they got it.
Was that libro Rav Yosef Karo?
Oh, Yosef Karo, I don't know. You have to see, you have to look at the Chidah, you have to look at the Shara Gilgulim to see whose Gilgul he was. But, so he says over here, Kinyan HaNevi'im. He says, I want to be that academy like the prophets went to teach you, even in today's day and world, to get to the highest level you could get to. He says, just like the prophets always were nidbaku bekonam, they were always attached, they were obsessed. They weren't obsessed with the Super Bowl and Versace and Gucci and going to Miami and Cancun like us mere mortals are. Their obsession was something else. Hashem, Yitbarach. They wanted to always be Batema Devekim. Ba'adonai Chaim Kolechem Hayom. And he says that's why Sharta Alem Ruach HaKodesh. We're on the third line over there. He said after this the Perushim came. They were very pious people. So he says they also wanted to follow and emulate the Nevi'im, but it wasn't so clear to them. But one thing they definitely did is they did the opposite of what the lust, the people were always the obsession of luxury. He says, it's not for you. You should know, if you learn this from there's along this ladder of things called Perishut, right? Which means all earthly pleasures are not necessary. And we go to the where? And what would they do? They weren't playing golf like today in the deserts, like you see in Tucson and Phoenix and all these. They'd always be learning Torah and saying Tehillim. That makes your heart so delightful and happy. So he says, they would read Tehillim so much and focus and meditate on the godly vision of Torah that they would become so attached to him. The heavenly lights. Then they would get to Ruach HaKodesh. So he says we have to go and research how did these people, the Perushim, what precisely and exactly, what marvelous acts of mitzvot did they do to get to these unfathomable to me. I just want to finish to the bottom. Unfathomable madrigot. So he says, I'm just going to read in English to go quicker. He says there was 4 great people that went into Pardes. Pardes is into heaven. One of them was Rabbi Akiva, and the angels there wanted to push him. But Baruch Hashem, since he had the zechut of 24,000 students of Torah, and he had the zechut of Rabbi Meir Balanes and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which was their students, he came out, thing came out crazy.
That's what I was taught.
Elisha ben Abuya, and then Ben Azai also came out a little. Yeah.
Ben Zoma. That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Week,
Ben Zoma also came out a little bit defected.
Yeah.
He says they also, what was this idea that he's saying? They also wanted to get to prophecy. It's like they weren't satisfied, Rabbi Akiva and his colleagues, to be in this earthly world. They wanted to go really high. So he says, the Marchu says, we cannot get to those madrigas, but at least if we have a little bit Ruach HaKodesh, like Eliyahu visiting us, that'd be a nice surprise. He says that already, like you see how the Ramchal is talking, the Marchu is talking. He's like, yeah, that happens to a lot of people. Rabim Zachu El Mefusamim. He says that's already a famous thing that a lot of people see Eliyahu Hanavi. So I guess in the time of the Marchu, it wasn't like there was plenty of people that we knew for a fact Eliyahu Hanavi would come to them. And also not only Eliyahu Hanavi, the others neshamot of Sadiqim, right? Like it says in the Zohar HaKodesh, in Sefer Tekunim, right? It doesn't have to precisely only be Eliyahu Hanavi, you know that. Or the Bet Yosef himself that you were talking about, Eitan, he has a Sefer. You have it? You should get it. It's called... No, there's another Sefer, yes. I forgot the name. I'll bring it here. I'll show it to you guys. It's called, it's the Malach. The Malach came and told him the secrets of the Torah, and then he writes down, like with the Malach.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about, yeah.
It's a famous sefer. The Hasidim like it a lot also. It's very good. It says stuff on the Parsha. Below Od Kim Bezmanenu, he says, the Marchu says, don't think that in our time, and he was only 500 years ago, there wasn't people. They become so pure and so elevated, and they never become angry, and they do these concrete, like A, B, C, like all these different prerequisites of getting Ruach HaKodesh, that they get it. Listen, it's not magic. According to how much you purify yourself, then you let in the light. A lot of times, it says, one time they asked the great Chassidic Rebbe, where's God? He's your father, he wants to hug you. You find me? So it says, he says, do not think that Ruach HaKodesh is impossible to achieve in our time, Rab Chaim Vital says. So he says, "V'laken yitzachli ruach b'tni la'atir pirushim la'atach mini laharot." So he says, that's why in my heart of hearts, I was compelled, the Marchu says, to write this book, Sharei Kedusha, to teach you the different gates of how to enter where? The highest levels of holiness. And to give you a specific GPS, step-by-step guide to the head of the mountain. That Mount Everest, that spiritual Mount Everest. He says, sometimes I talk about very, 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 very secret stuff. A lot of books, they leave out the last chapter. Did you know that, Eitan?
Really?
The Sharei Kedusha, because it goes into, it's really, really like giving you Ruach HaKodesh. So if somebody's not ready, he'll go crazy, like the friends of Rabbi Akiva. So a lot of the versions of this book, my brother-in-law told me.
Magid Misharim.
Yeah, Magid Misharim. So you see, you have people that even... Not some people like Eliyahu comes to them. Some people, the angels come. They came to the Gra also, which was only a few hundred years ago. But the Gra said, "I don't want to learn." He says, "I want to." You know what the Gra said? He said, "I want to get to the understanding the Torah through my own toiling. I don't want any freebie."
Wow.
What is it, like 9 kav?
Oh, look what he says. And he says, a lot of these secrets that I tell you how to get to Ruach HaKodesh, I learned from my great teacher that was an angel himself. The Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria Hashkenazi.
The great Kabbalah.
By the way, the Kabbalah. You know why the Arizal is such a special neshama? Because they say he's a Gilgul of Moshe Rabbeinu.
Really?
He's the Gilgul of the Rash Shimon Bar Yochai, and Rav Shimon Bar Yochai is the Gilgul of Moshe.
Well, he also has to be a Gilgul of David and Chizkiyahu.
No, he has the.
Supposed to be Mashiach,
No, Yeshua is the original Mashiach ben Yosef.
Oh, we're talking about Mashiach ben Yosef.
Yeah. Ma'achuz ben
But
David.
Moshe doesn't even come from Yosef.
I know. So you probably, it's like a nitzutz.
Oh, okay.
He says in this book also, I'm going to reveal an inch and cover 2,000 inches. Because he says you have to be so lofty that he opens the crack of the door, you see the vision. You understand? We're almost done. We're done. He says, I opened the head of a needle, and now the light emanates, and then if you understand what he's alluding to, you could get to the real concrete Ruach Hakodesh. So he says, V'achelek hadalet, he said the end of the book is actually the different meditations you do to get to Ruach HaKodesh. And he says, I've tested them and I've gotten there. So he says, it's proven. So all of this is teaching us that don't think that when that vision that we had on Har Sinai, that God revealed him to us through prophecy and through Ruach HaKodesh, we still have that string. It may not be like a big open miracles, but that string that attaches us to our Creator is always there.